Hey there, Maximizers. Kevin here from MaximizingEcommerce.com. I help people build e-commerce businesses that they can be proud of. And in this particular video, I'm going to be talking about recent experience I had a couple weeks ago when I was at Seller Summit, which is hosted by Steve Chu, who you know from My Wife Quit Her Job podcast, and also from Tony Anderson, who's the co-founder of Seller Summit. It was a really good conference, and I'll get into a little bit more about what I learned at the conference, some takeaways I had, and just some good meat hooks, maybe that's the wrong word, things that just basically some little nuggets, maybe I should say, that I got out of it. But real quick, I literally just recorded a couple videos earlier, and I went downstairs to take a quick break, and package arrived. I got a new toy here. I just want to point this out. It's a Blue Yeti microphone. So I'd love it if in the comment section below, if you could say if this improved or decreased or whatever your feedback is in the audio now that I have a different microphone. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. But anyway, back to Seller Summit, which is the reason you're watching this video. I'm a really big, strong proponent for connecting with other people. Now, sometimes we get into selling online as opposed to being at doing door-to-door sales of encyclopedias, for example. I don't know why I came up with that one. But do some sort of offline selling because it's different. You don't have to sell someone face-to-face, but I do think that it's a good idea to get connected with other people. And the nice thing is about a conference, it's like the best level of connections you can get because you're talking to people in real time, face-to-face, not just like over the phone or a Skype chat or a video call. Like you're actually talking to that person and getting to know them, and hearing things out, seeing their body language, just the vibes, everything's better when you're connected to someone directly. So I would say the conference itself had a lot of really good information. Like it almost felt like drinking from a fire hose, and I'll go over some of the things that I would say are takeaways. But more than anything, it's really just coming down to those relationships that you take away from other people. Getting to know other people, having someone that you can call, and hopefully not just text, but at least even if you're just texting or emailing back and forth with someone, that's huge. And just being in that environment is huge. So as much as there's good information, I really think the best value of it, and I'll just cut right to the chase on that one, is just getting to know other people and being in that environment. So just to describe a little bit more about Seller Summit, this is actually my second year going. I went last year, had a really good experience, had big growth from one year to the next. So basically from 2016 to 2017. So in 2017 is when I went. It was same time around May 2017. So it was almost a year ago, it was right about a year ago that I went last year. And I would say just being around other people and having it become a new level of more real, having this business selling online was probably the biggest help I've had for my business so far. So I've got a lot of people I really have to thank along the way, just from watching their videos and listening to their podcasts. People like Scott Volker, Steve Chu, Greg Mercer, people who are out there offering content. And the nice thing is at these events, I've got to actually shake their hands and thank them in person. So that's one of the nice things is, and when you're at these events, it's not just the people you know from podcasts and videos, it's the people that are just doing it for a living. And it's like, wait, you have this whole big spectrum of people that are doing this, like people that are at just starting out, like they haven't picked out a product and they're just there looking for advice, to people that are doing 8 figures a year. When I say 8 figures, I mean $10 million or more in sales, which is awesome. And everywhere in between. And it's nice connecting with these different people. And because of it being more real for me last year, 2017, and seeing growth in my business, I was able to qualify for the conference itself is 2 days. So it starts like on a Thursday night, and then it's Friday and Saturday is the actual conference. So Thursday night is like a welcome reception. But Thursday and Wednesday night, there's a reception for people that sign up for a mastermind. And the mastermind is basically anyone between 250,000 to $1 million and $1 million and above. So there's two different levels there. And I squeaked into the, at the time, I just squeaked into the 250 plus mastermind. And, in that room, it was really good because it was all people that were essentially on my level, but they're all ahead of me. And it was really good because now I'm not just in my own head, and there's people with vastly different business models. Like there's actually somebody in the room said, "What is FBA?" Everyone was like, "Oh, it's fulfillment by Amazon." And she had no idea because she doesn't sell on Amazon. And, there's somebody who was selling on eBay, like exclusively on eBay. He was buying like truckloads of stuff and selling them on eBay. And there's people, all kinds of different models. And it wasn't all people that are just private labeling and selling on Amazon or, their own website. There's, various different ways people were sourcing products. So that was kind of cool to see in the mastermind group. And, sometimes we get in our own head of, okay, this is the way things should be. And I took a lot away from the mastermind, just having sometimes advice I didn't necessarily agree with. We all got 25 minutes because there was 12 of us in the room. And we all got 25 minutes in the hot seat, so to speak, where basically we talked about our business, what we needed help with, and people offer their help. And probably the biggest takeaway for me was I needed to get a better handle on my numbers. So I'm working on getting a bookkeeper to be on top of my book so I can always know right away, looking at it, not just kind of like I feel like. And I'm starting to realize I'm doing more I feel like with my numbers. Like I can look and see the screenshots of like what my sales are, and I know I have a good idea of what the flow through is, but I really need to have more granular detail, which just as I've gotten bigger, I realize I need to have a better handle on that. It's not something you necessarily need, first starting out, it was just kind of like move forward, move forward, move forward, move forward. And I think move forward, move forward, move forward is still the way to go. But I need to have more information to make better decisions. Because people were asking me a lot of questions. I was giving probably more I feel like answers than I should have. Should have been more concrete. So, and a lot of people were doing that. So, but it was a good takeaway that like, nobody was trying to like, it was a supportive environment. So nobody's trying to play like, gotcha, you don't know this. Oh, gotcha. It was more just like, well, what about this? What about that? And, one of the big questions was, and this was, I went in the hot seat right before we broke for lunch. And it was like right at the end, someone said, well, you should only be selling in the US, not internationally. And I feel very strongly that selling it, like at least in the English language marketplaces like Canada and the UK, is a no-brainer because you're making additional sales with almost no extra work. Like Canada, I've done nothing to optimize it pretty much all year, which I need to work on a little bit. But I didn't do a good job of describing why I sell internationally. And I talked to some people about it afterwards, and they're like, oh, okay, what you're saying makes sense. So basically, last year, I had the sales to qualify for this mastermind only because of my sales internationally. So if I had just had been selling in the US, I wouldn't have had the sales. So I needed to have those additional sales. And it was basically like, it wasn't costing me any additional outlay of capital to go internationally. So like, for example, like I had 15% higher sales because of what I was selling in the US from selling in Canada. And so it was about 25-30% of my US sales I sold internationally because I also, started selling in Europe. And I didn't have that on the tip of my tongue And I remember like waking up at 2:30 in the morning the next night, or like, that night, and like going back and like looking at the numbers, and like looked at the previous week. And it was like, let's say it was like $4,800 in total sales between all the marketplaces and on Amazon, and 3,700 of which came from the US, which, as I recall, it was like a 23% international to 77% split. And which basically that 23 to 77, it's not always like that. Sometimes it's more international, sometimes it's more US. Like the ratio is more favorable one way or the other. I mean, it's always US is the higher, but sometimes it's a skewed higher to the US or skewed more in the middle for international because of less sales relative. I think you're following what I'm saying. And the key takeaway was, okay, for that previous week that I happened to be looking at, it was 29% return higher sales selling internationally. So that's sales I wouldn't have had if I didn't at least put my listings out there and send in inventory. And that would have been a better way to describe it than just like, well, I feel like because I didn't have the numbers on the tip of my tongue. Because I've gotten to a point in my business where I've had to hire a full-time virtual assistant, who actually thankfully is starting for me next week as I record this. But I was getting to the ceiling of time, and it was like knowing the numbers and having a good handle on them, because my business is complex enough that I really need to have a good handle on the numbers. I didn't have that good handle. So more than anything, and the nice thing is, and people were even saying this in the mastermind, when people are challenging you on something, it doesn't mean you have to do it. You pick what is valuable to you and you do it. So for me, it was like, okay, well, for me, selling internationally is a no-brainer. And maybe other people just want to spend more time focusing on the US. That's not my business model. And I feel very strongly that there's a case to why would someone not want an additional 29%? Even if it's some weeks are more favorable to the US. So say whatever I sell in the US, I'm only selling an additional 15% internationally between all the international marketplaces, not just Canada, but but that's 15% extra for not sourcing new products, not starting the ball over from scratch, but just basically copying and pasting listings, putting them over there, and then just letting them run. So that challenge at least had me thinking, and I think that was probably a really good thing, was that having my thought processes challenged, because sometimes we're all good at being in our own head, but we don't always know what other people are thinking. So that was, I think, a really good thing for me, at least, was getting out of my own head. And I'm glad I did that exercise. And just hearing other people, and again, that room where there's 12 of us, and in that $250 to $1 million a year in sales category. And I think I was the only person in that room that had a full-time job. Well, there was one other guy that had a full-time job. So out of 12 people, 10 were doing it full-time. And so hearing kind of their thought processes was good too, because, some of these people were selling, $600,000-$700,000, more than double what I'm doing. So that was good to hear, other people that are ahead. So you can kind of start, for lack of a better word, reverse engineering. Like, because sometimes when you start out and you're like, oh, I'm going to aspire to be the guy that's selling like, $1 million a year, or whatever the case is, but there's a whole lot of checkpoints along the way. And as much as you want to have that vision ahead of like, okay, here's where I want to be in like 5 years, or whatever the case is, but it's good to see that vision of someone who's 2-3 steps ahead of where you are. So if there's 100 steps in that journey, they're 2-3 steps ahead of you. So you can see, okay, what is it they did to get to there, and what do I need to do from where I'm at now? And that was another good takeaway. And I've incorporated the person actually that facilitated our mastermind. Her name is Dana Janzumis. I hope I just pronounced that right. But she's very well respected in the e-commerce space, and she did a really good job. She's the one that actually challenged me on the you should just be selling in the US, not internationally. So thank you for the advice, Dana. And at least thank you for challenging me on that, because that got my mind thinking of why it is good the way I run my business the way I do. And she also did a talk. She was a speaker at the conference. And so now she was actually the first speaker after the initial keynote session the next day. And she was talking about this, she calls a weekly trend report, where like she has like 9 years of data on this spreadsheet where she manually goes in, not using tools, but she writes down like these numbers and then puts it into a spreadsheet. Because there is something to be said for when you're going in and you're retrieving data on your own, like going into like Amazon or going into a Shopify store or going into Google AdWords and pulling data and manually writing it down and then manually typing it into her spreadsheet. And that just engaging your hands while doing that, I think does give you a new level of understanding. So that's something I've also incorporated into my business. That was one of the first takeaways I did when I got back. Was she had a template at 44ideas.net, I believe is her website. And she was sharing that information, and it was this template that she was suggesting using. And it was really, really good. And I've adapted it to my own needs, but just getting in on a weekly basis, getting more into the numbers, I can see how it's already helping me make better business decisions. So again, that was a big takeaway. And then I had a good chance to also have my mind challenged on a few things. Like, I'm not a big fan of the idea of like these launches, like where you have a launch service, send your to their list of people like, hey, here, buy this at a discount. So like there was a company called Viral Launch that was a supplier there, and I didn't go to their session because basically you picked between, there's 2 sessions every time, and like you pick, you want this session or the other one, the next an hour later, whatever, this session or this one or this one. And I didn't go to their session. I don't remember what I was doing at the time, but bottom line is I didn't realize they didn't just do like launches, because the name of the company is Viral Launch, but they had all this other like good keyword information and like really good data. And I was really impressed by them and like what they're able to share data wise with, finding the right keywords and stuff like that. So it was definitely, that was beneficial, was, this like roundtable discussion we had towards the end that I had with them. Because they had a lot of good insight into finding the right keywords. Like one thing that they had talked about that I never thought of is that if you have a keyword, like let's say coffee maker, you will, if it's in your title or your back end keywords for Amazon, it's going to also have coffee makers be indexed, meaning it could find it, but it doesn't really mean it's going to rank. It's going to be more likely to rank if you have coffee maker and coffee makers. So if you have the plural, so having singular and plural forms of some of the main keywords you're going after, that was a good takeaway that I need to start incorporating into some of my listings. And again, some of it is just the being around other people. And I keep going back to this because that is the big takeaway. Is that, also too, like wherever you're at now, there's someone who wants to be where you are. So as much as I started off with, there was the mastermind group I was in, the 250 to 1 million, and there was 2 groups of 12 that were like my group, in the 250 to 1 million in sales. And there was also the $1 million plus. And there was, I think, 3 groups of that one. And, we're all thinking, oh, we want to be there. Well, then we get to the main session, and there's a lot of people who would love to have qualified for the 250,000. There's people that, publicly in the Facebook group said that they wanted to qualify for that next year, which I think is a great goal. That was one of my goals when I was in their shoes last year. So wherever you are, you're always where someone else wants to be. And, you always can find someone to model. So if you can, try to always help someone who's even 2 steps behind you or just getting started or whatever the case is, because chances are you probably had help from someone else along the way. And if you can be a beacon of hope or share knowledge to someone, you can probably save them some of the pitfalls that you went through. For lack of calling it good karma or whatever the case is, it's just a good idea to help other people. It's starting to rain here. I'm in front of a window, so if it starts picking up, again, this is a new microphone, so I'm not sure what all it picks up. So start hitting pitter patter and thunder, I apologize. But more than anything, just help other people and realize we're all just running our own race. So, if you can be helpful to someone else, and maybe you can also share knowledge to someone who's ahead of you. And maybe someone who's not to where you are yet, they know something and they teach you something that could help you. So we all have like little bits and pieces that we're trying to learn along the way. So it's a great conference. They do a good job with trying to get everybody to kind of meet one another. Like, the lunches are pretty informal. The size of the group is about 200 people. So, I've been to some other big events that are like 3,000 people, and, going up to people and saying, "Hey, how are you?" They're just kind of like, usually people are pretty open at conferences, but sometimes you get different reactions. Whereas here, at least everyone's doing relatively the same thing. So more than anything, and I know I've talked about this in other videos, but just try to connect with others. And if you can, you're going to find it very beneficial to you and your own business. And if you're just getting started, just even if it's in, comments of a YouTube channel like this, leave comments for other people, comment and reply to other comments, same thing in Facebook groups, and get out there, meet other people. Don't just hide behind your keyboard. Really is the big takeaway, because, the more other people can share information with you and you can share with others, the better we're all going to be that are doing something like this. So hopefully you found this video to be helpful. And if you did, I would absolutely love it if you could give a thumbs up. And, big shout out anyone that's watching this that is, at the conference. I'd love it if you could leave a comment down below. But just in general, just leave a comment down below. And if you're not already, please subscribe to this channel. And hopefully you found this video to be helpful. And have a wonderful day. Take care.